So let's move on to the next panel. This is the over-the-top to the living room, with or without cable. And we've got quite a big panel. I'd like to welcome Tom Morgan, our moderator, who's now CEO of Media D. These are some of the companies that are completely going to change the marketplace. Some of them are collaborating and some of them are scheming against cable. And all of them have different business models, and we want to hear what they're going to do. And some of them have been in the business for a long time. You know, the TiVo, they've got deep relationships with cable. So we want to welcome them all to San Francisco. Thanks for being here.
Afternoon. Thanks for hanging around for the last mega panel. I'm going to let each individual speaker introduce themselves. What I'm going to do is start a little bit with the panel and talk a little bit about this definition, because one of the things that's always bothered me about this whole area is define over the top. There's originally it was putting stuff on the net, but the net has leaked into whole aspects of every business that's out here. Describe how it is, what your business is, how you relate to the internet from a television standpoint. And the first question is, cable friend or foe? Are you participating, it's not just cable, but the normal infrastructure. How do you fit in? So I'm going to let each panelist describe the beginning, and then we're going to have a series of discussions of what's going on and how you see the market developing and what role your company plays. And to get some idea of the kind of area we have here, what we've got is 4 players that are basically relying on some form of box or physical architecture to be in the net. We've got 3 people focused on widgets and TV widgets and the rest, and we have 3 companies that are straight internet television kinds of players. So there's multiple business models here represented by different ways you can make it. So the question is how are you using the internet to be over the top? How do you make money at this business, and how do you relate to the classic players that are in the business? Introduce yourself first, please.
Sure, put me on the spot.
Yeah, my left.
I'm Wilfred Martis. I run platform strategy and planning for the Digital Home Group at Intel, which is a group focused on consumer electronics. And you asked me if we're a friend or a foe. Well, we're an arms dealer to the world, right? So you guys can't run anything without our hardware.
But you've been focusing a lot on the widget out of your group, and
yeah, so I told Patrick right before we walked up here that I wasn't going to steal the spotlight from him on the widget channel stuff, but yeah, we're working very closely with Yahoo on the widget channel, bringing it on top of our own consumer electronics system-on-chip devices.
I'm Phil Weiser. I'm the founder and president of Sesame. We are an end-to-end TV service. So we figured out a way to take traditional cable programming and finally make that available in a non-incumbent format. We deliver over a hybrid network that we've created. It's a nationwide network that takes traditional cable programming, combines that with on-demand and interactive and internet programming in one simple service for the consumer. So given that we are a complete service, I'd say we're a friend to the cable industry because we're creating a viable economic model based on pay TV and subscription revenues in the face of a conversion of the industry to just purely online and a decrease in revenue.
Hi, my name is Jeff Allen, founder and CEO of RallyPoint, and we are more of an application provider, and the way that we've chosen to enter into the market is really to focus on a sports fan that wants to use maybe internet-style applications and functions like fantasy sports, but to interact through the remote control on the television. So, you know, we're tied into the television platforms, and our ideal scenario is not deal with an extra box, build right into the television. So we are building on top of widget platforms, like Yahoo's TV widget platforms. But I think the real innovative thing is not necessarily the application itself that we're doing, but kind of how we are trying to reach out to consumers so they see it. So our approach is really, as these new televisions are sold, to have these applications be shown at retail so consumers can see what it's like, so they're made aware of them. And whether they purchase them in the store or later come back and download them to their TV probably doesn't matter so much, but really the awareness and trying to use the way that consumers find out about these services as the way to make them more aware of them.
My name is Randy Levine. I'm with a company called iStream Planet, and we provide an end-to-end solution from consulting to production to player development, digital rights management to delivery. And in terms of you know, friend or foe of the cable companies, you know, we do focus quite a bit on the tri-screen strategy. we helped AT&T last year deliver the Masters for both their handsets as well as their IPTV. So hopefully we could be considered friends.
I'm Vic O'Drina. I'm CEO and founder of a company called ZV. ZV was really founded around this idea that there is a lot of great high-quality video moving to the internet. You can see it if you go to abc.com. All 5 seasons of Lost are all sitting there, and I can very easily consume them. We really call it ultimate video on demand, right? But the problem with all of it is that it appears on our computers, and we do believe that at least today, the computer is the only platform that really can provide all the innovation that you need and all of the different methods that people are using to experiment with new ways to deliver this video come most smoothly on a computer platform, PC or Mac. Problem, though, is it's not in our living room, and the last thing we'll advocate is putting another PC either in a television or in our living rooms. So we kept thinking of that problem and realized that if we could make it so that the PC in the home or the Mac in the home actually became an HDTV broadcast station, literally using QAM as an extra QAM channel on your existing cable lineup, and broadcast it throughout the home, then at any HDTV, whether it's your home theater or bedroom, you can just tune to this new channel and off you go. You're now watching your computer. So we see our technology and the question of how do we monetize it. We are a hardware company intending to sell profitably hardware. We see our technology in the future as we drive our costs down. They're expensive today. This is a $500 box. In fact, today we literally just released a $2,500 commercial box doing this kind of technology. But as we drive our costs down, you can envision buying an HD TiVo, a Roku box, a Sesame box, or what have you, and using our technologies to distribute HD throughout the home. So we're a little less about the internet content, and we're a lot more about how to just get it to the right place. Now that said, the part of what makes us a little bit of a confusing company, we also have a software application. Because now that I got your computer to the living room, it's a 3-foot GUI. It's not styled properly in order to be consumed in the living room with a 10-foot GUI intent with a remote control in your hand. So we built an application called Zinc that really it's an RSS-based application, a media RSS thing. It's essentially a styler for how to find all that internet content and how to present it in a unified way.
Hi, I'm Jim Allen. I'm another friend of cable. Come on, you also say hi, Jim. So we're friends of cable, but we believe in tough love. And we're an internet television company. We produce 11 programs. We distribute 100% online. And our goal is to love cable through the transition that's going to totally change their business model in a way that'll turn them topsy-turvy so that they'll be completely different. But we love them. And actually, we produce programming designed for people who've mostly abandoned traditional media. Men 18 to 34, they don't spend a lot of time watching traditional television, reading newspapers, magazines. They live their life on the internet. They socialize, they get their news, their information, their love, whatever. Actually, you may have read this. One of my founders last night, somebody broke into his apartment. Rather than calling the cops, he set up a Ustream connection and Twittered out how he was going to get this guy out of his apartment. He had 500 people around the world watching this guy in his apartment who broke in. That's my audience. That's not traditional cable. So we distribute our shows via YouTube, Hulu, Juiced, Revision3.com. They're all episodic. They're all nonfiction. They appeal to people's passions. Think about it as the video version of special interest magazine publishing 30 years ago. Things that people are passionate about, audiences that can be aggregated around that, high-value audiences, sponsorships built in. And we're certainly, we could be distributed via cable, but we don't need to be. Our audience is connected to the internet, and that's how they get it. And if I could, just one more minute to talk back to what you were talking about what this sort of interactive TV, what to call it. I think we should call it Tickle Me TV and give everybody a Wii remote shaped like Elmo, and that's it. Because people understand Tickle Me, right?
My daughter would love you if you did that.
I'm Tim Twirtle. I'm Vice President of Consumer Products for Roku. We make a little black box that is about getting content that formerly was sort of locked in the internet onto your TV. Sort of like ZV, but in a different manner. We focus on simplicity. So it's really about a great, simple, basic user experience so that everybody can sort of take that on-ramp. We focus on value. It's a $99 box. And we focus on content. Our first content provider was Netflix. And we've had a lot of success getting Netflix subscribers to buy our boxes. We have a few 100,000 out in the market today. And last week we added Amazon Video on Demand. And so now there are 50,000, or more than 50,000 choices of programming to watch on our box. This summer, we'll be releasing a channel development kit so that anybody can create a channel and put their content onto our box. And to the cable friend or foe question, my friend Reed Hastings, I think, refers to this as mooning the giant. And so I'm not going to do that. I think that cable has an absolute value in place for certain users, but there's more content today available than what they can put through those pipes, at least for most consumers. And so we need to obviously partner on the broadband side and make sure that the caps and things don't impact the ability to deliver video over IP. But we really want to work together.
Tara Matra from TVOT. And I guess I can say we've been foe, friend, foe. Some companies probably aren't quite sure if we're friends or foes. We have relationships today with DirecTV, who started as a friend, I guess kind of became a foe, friend again. We've got relationships with Comcast and Cox, among others. And, you know, originally we were the company that introduced the ability to skip advertising. And now we're out there, the company trying to save the advertising industry from a world that's increasingly going to have devices in their homes, whether it's TiVo or DVRs, that allow you to fast forward. And what we're seeing is people are fast forwarding through those advertisements, and the crisis is coming to the television business. But so when I think about TiVo and who are our friends and who are our foes, at this point I feel like we're probably friends with everybody, because we're trying to provide solutions for not just the consumers but for cable, satellite, and at this point programmers and advertisers as well.
I'm Avner from Boxy, and we're friends of the cable broadband business. But we'd like to be friends with everybody. We're very friendly, but some people don't want to be our friends right now, and we take it personally, but we'll overcome. And what we do at Boxy is we allow people to bring media, digital media, to their television screens, mostly. We have 330,000 users right now, and they're using it on laptops, on Mac Minis, on Apple TVs. And Boxy allows users to bring all the media that they have in their home network, as well as stream from online Netflix, Hulu, sometimes yes, sometimes no, CBS, Comedy Central, Last.fm, Picasa, a bunch of other services. We try to make it all easy to use with a remote control, and that got us into trouble.
Patrick Berry, I manage the Connected TV group at Yahoo. We are interested in trying to bring the values that are inherent in the internet as a medium to make television watching better in a way that preserves the fundamental values that people associate with TV: high fidelity, ease of use, reliability. And that proves to be something of a challenge, but we're trying to make progress every day on that by using our open platform, working with the best-of-breed developers in online media and online services to envision a future in which the internet can actually make TV watching better. And in terms of friend or foe with cable, you know, absolutely interested in bringing the openness of the internet to you know, the dominant video services platforms all over the world, and in this country, it's clearly is cable. So hope to be a friend.
So nobody here is actually mooning the cable companies except for Abner a little bit on one side. Just,
Yeah, we run fast.
Okay, good. All right, good.
By the way, I did invite cable to participate on this panel, and they
We didn't have enough
definitely
people
were,
as it is.
They didn't want to, but they're in the room.
So given I've got 11 people up here that have different business models, I'm going to do it by hand votes of how you participate versus doing this again and asking your business model. How many people actually participate in the ad revenue generated on the platform you put in the marketplace? You sell or participate in the cash flow. So you got, well, come on. You participate in the ad. You sell ads. You sell ads. Okay, so we got 4 people. How many have a subscription fee, some form of carriage fee that you participate or is present on your box or your environment? Okay, so we got 4 there. And how many just are physically selling hardware? Okay, so basically there's multiple business models out here. There's not one. It's not over the top. This is the problem with over the top is there's 11 different business models, 11 different combinations, different, you know, the widget people. Let me address that a little bit. How do you participate give it your over the video, in the sense the video source may come from traditional sources, but you've got applications. Jeff and
I like to say we're completely compatible with all existing video services because we don't disrupt those at all. We allow users to enjoy whatever their video service might be. We just provide an entry point for online services, whether those be video services or information services, social services, et cetera. And in terms of our model, where Yahoo has a relevant service, we monetize those services through advertising, our owned and operated services. We also make monetization services available to third parties, just like we do on the internet, and the same business model applies here.
Yeah, in our case, we are providing services that people are already paying for on the internet. So participation in fantasy leagues, getting real-time scores and stats sent to their TV. They may use it, and they probably will use it when they're watching certain types of programming, say sports games. But although we can detect what it is they're watching, we've chosen not to, so that layer that exists over the video, is really what the consumers will pay either a subscription to us for, or sponsors will come in and advertise.
how does it, I'm going to do the widget world, and I'm going to jump to the box world in just a second. In the widget world, if you have a CNN widget, but you're watching MSNBC, isn't there an issue of, hijacking involved? Don't you run into those kinds of problems as the internet-enabled applications start impacting what the consumer's watching?
I mean, it's a kind of really a non-problem because that happens today, but it just happens to happen on a PC or a laptop or a mobile device. I mean, this happens all the time. I watch TV with accompanying and maybe contradictory sources side by side with that. We're just making it a little bit more convenient for the user, making it a little bit more interesting maybe for the user to consume that content, but it's really the same behavior.
On the box manufacturers, we had an interesting discussion earlier about where you get rights. One of the big issues for anything over the top is that there's a group of very important people. The two most important people in the cable industry have first name of Matt Bond and Matt Strauss. And if you know who they are, they're the people that have acquired content for Comcast for the carriage contracts. And they've been laying landmines for the last 3 or 4 years on rights and privileges of what you can put over the net. It's not the MFN clauses in their carriage contracts, it's the ADM clauses, alternative means of distribution. The internet has been basically relegated to other content, or there's people that have interesting ways. How have you worked around that, and how are you delivering that, quote, over the top?
Well, our view is that over the top meant getting a viable, complete television experience, a coherent one, by the way, that could add interactivity, but in actual context of traditional programming, deliver that to the living room today. And it's clear that you can't do that over broadband alone. You're picking away at the scraps of content, maybe getting some things that you can sell on a show-by-show basis, but if you want true live cable programming, you can't deliver that over the internet. We're the first company that went in and said, well, you know what, we're going to build a hybrid network. One that takes a closed system, if you will, and combines it seamlessly for the user with an internet solution that has traditional cable programming, internet programming, on-demand, interactivity. You can rent movies, and it's all done in one piece. And it was a pretty bold move to take all of that on. But I took inspiration, my background's in the music industry. I looked at the music industry in 2000. And you could go and buy an MP3 player, you could go to somebody and buy music online, you could go to the PC and get bits and pieces, but Apple came along and said, we're doing it all, end to end, we've got a consumer vision in mind, and that's going to break the market open, and everyone thought they were crazy. And they broke the market open, and I don't mean to be as bold to say we're going to be the next Apple, but certainly we had that consumer vision in mind, and we felt the time was right. Instead of picking away at the corners of interactivity and hoping somebody bakes it into a cable box, we're just going to do it all and deliver the complete solution.
So what he's contending, I'd love to dig in here, but what he says is you can't do it from a rights standpoint, so you worked around the contracts of rights. You can do it technically. I saw the reaction. You can stream like iStream.
It's purely a rights issue. Can you get the content and the program to the consumer in the living room in a way that gets them to the brands and the programming that they expect on the TV? Or are you building something that's additive? And our view is the time was right to do something that's not additive, it's complete.
Yeah, so I think our view is that it's not all there now, but it's happening very, very quickly. The issues that Boxy has run into with Hulu and stuff are short-term issues, I think. I think that ultimately all this content will be available, and you won't need to have any of that vestige of the existing linear feeds.
The MFNs last for a decade in the Comcast deals that he was talking about.
Well,
So
but
it's tough.
To the point of the Roku box before, you have 50,000 pieces of content available between Amazon and Netflix alone, right? High quality stuff. How many people have watched ABC HD shows online? And quality's not bad. Stutters every once in a while. But as you said, it's going to get there, right? And there's a lot of it already there.
But his point is, and this is, go ahead.
It's not a technology issue. I completely agree.
No,
It's
but
gonna
even
get
on
better.
the,
It's
even on
gonna
the
get
right
better.
side, I mean, you said you just came from a music background. I mean, if you look at what's going on with music today, you know, you don't have to pay the technology companies. They want the labels, for instance, they want as much promotion as they possibly can get. So it's no problem producing, you know, incredible live events with incredible interactivity. I mean, it's happening today. It's happening with, you know, with adaptive streaming, what Move's doing, what Microsoft's doing, what Adobe's doing. I mean, I just, you know, it's...
I think the point is it's getting better, but it's going to be quite a while before you can get access to traditional cable programming fully delivered over that platform. And there's a way to get
But
to
is
it
that
today.
the question? Is
and as it
tradition?
grows.
But is that the question? We want traditional, or
Right.
do we want niche
Right. You want
programming?
the
I mean, the
best
point is,
programming.
I heard yesterday. I missed the panel that I was supposed to be on yesterday. I heard yesterday there was a discussion about advertising to. Actually, I wasn't supposed to be on that one, but supposedly there was a question about advertising and how people didn't want to be pushed into this narrow focus. And the whole promise of what we were trying to do back in 1997, 1998, 1999 was, you know, we were going to create this niche programming that everyone was going to, thoroughly enjoy and that was the whole promise of it. So to talk about traditional, that wasn't the point. And I still don't think it's the point. You know?
So is the internet the source of, I don't want to say long tail, but more innovative programming? You do a lot of live events. At Move, we were doing 500 a week,
right,
or whatever the number was, but a huge number. Is that one of the big advantages, the live niche kinds of things? Is it new sources, or is internet-enabled kinds of things? Go ahead.
Well, you know, from where I sit, it's new content that appeals to people. So it mirrors where we were with other media before the internet came out. There was scarcity of content. You know, think about magazines. We had big magazines, Look, Life, Saturday Evening Post, that devolved into a number of different publications that appealed to smaller niche audiences or smaller community-based audiences as well. Saying that there's always going to be something that everybody wants to watch, but there's going to be less and less of them, and more options for people to find program that speaks specifically to them. The program that talks right to you and that appeals to 100,000 people, it can now be done profitably online, and it will be done profitably, and that will take eyeballs away from the things that appeal to millions and tens of millions of people.
Abner, you recently, Tara, I apologize to cut you off, but you recently had the issue of Hulu / the couple of big nets pulling back from your relationship because they didn't want you to have access to that programming. What was the logic there, you think?
I'd rather not go into our friendly discussions with some content partners but I can talk about the industry.
Fine.
The big issue I think that people are having in the industry is that when that content comes from the users' laptops and desktops back to the TV screen, that breaks the whole business model that has been existing for years. So for cable, it means that people will downgrade cable packages, and that's very bad for their profit margins, or cancel cable completely, and that's even worse. For the media companies, even though in general they should be just interested in how many people are watching their content as long as they can monetize it, it does break their business model. They make a lot of money from licensing fees from cable. They have setup of cable stations that are very profitable and will have a hard time to exist in an on-demand world. So I think the challenge that we faced is just that we made it easy for people to bring that content to the TV screen, and we made it in a very visible way because we're small but noisy. And that just got the attention of many people that saw that this change is coming too fast.
Look, cable is built on scarcity, right? You have only so many channels you can pump down, whether it's a 700 megahertz system or whatever. The internet, there is no scarcity. Something like Boxy, Roku, whatever, there's no scarcity. You can pump any single thing that's in the right format can come through that box and be delivered to the consumer. The problem is, as I see it, is most of the cable channels are sucking on the hind tit of affiliate fees, and these affiliate fees, maybe for ESPN that works, maybe for TBS that works, but for ESPN ESPN, the Ocho, or any of these other smaller networks, they're going to go by the wayside unless they figure out how to distribute on the internet. A la carte is the way things are going to go as we see it. And a la carte is not good news for a lot of the large cable companies or the people who create content for cable.
Amen. Yeah.
I think ESPN has. I mean, ESPN has, thanks to Move Networks. I mean, they you know, ESPN 360, I get to watch the Syracuse games on that I can't watch because I'm stuck watching UCLA and Pac-10 basketball in LA.
I was just going to add, you know, 3 years ago, we started looking at TiVo as not just being a digital video recorder, but as a way to also retrieve content. We started working on content relationships directly with networks and in some cases aggregators, and we have relationships with, you know, Amazon and Netflix and YouTube and down the line. But when I started, I had come from Comcast working for the MAT, so I was working on those deals that said you can't work with companies like TiVo, then went to work for TiVo, so I was kind of working against myself. But now what I've found, with the exception of a few networks who might not have the leverage to really negotiate their deals with the operators in a way that allows them to work with independent platforms, it definitely was a rights issue and not a technology issue, and I definitely think we're moving past that.
7% of our views come through TiVo right now. Thank you very much. We love that. And that's the model.
Okay, C3 ratings, you single-handedly disrupted the whole television cash flow with ad skipping. On the net, ads aren't skipped. What's the resolution for television? Is it going to be more of a net model? We go to a new ad model? It will eventually DVRs slow down on that? I'm not saying turning it all off, but what's the you know, you're back helping solve that problem. Then I want to talk about how you tie into the CE platforms over here, but put you on the spot.
No, I mean, you look at the DVR market today, and we're roughly in 30 million homes, not TiVo, but that's the full DVR market. In the next 2 to 3 years, we're expecting the DVR market to be about 50 to 60 million homes. And so this kind of crisis for the television business is very real, because when you look at how a DVR home, you probably all know this, consume programming, most of it's fast-forwarded. And so what we're doing at TiVo today is we've invented inventory and ways to work with our subscriber base to find new ways to engage the viewer, to catch the viewer at a time where advertising isn't disruptive. So, for example, you're watching a program live or recorded, you pause it. Now here's a chance for us to present inventory to you at a time where you, the viewer, might be open to it. And guess what? If we target it a little bit more and we have cooking appliances or cooking food-related products on a racial ratio, you're more open to looking at it. And if at the end of a program, when you're finished viewing it and you have the opportunity to delete it, if we use that real estate at a time when, yeah, we're not taking you away from your programming, but we're introducing to you either something new to watch or a program you might care about, now that the odds that you're going to engage with that programming are so much greater. I think a lot of what went wrong with interactive television in the past is you always had to leave what you were doing to go do something else, which you may have thought was interesting to you, but then as it turned out, you missed the show, you missed what you were originally there to do. And so, yeah, we introduced fast forwarding, and we can't put that genie back in the bottle at this point, but what we can do is, in a world where viewers are in control, find ways to engage those viewers, because people have always walked out of the room when the commercials were on. Maybe they were paying attention, maybe they weren't. It had to be some kind of creative app to get your attention in the first place. And now we're taking that and applying the technology to it.
I think the key on the internet is they don't turn the volume up as much. I think that's why people are willing to.
I absolutely agree that engagement's going to be key, but from where we sit, I think we're maybe 2-3 years away from what I would call peak DVR. And the need to have an expensive, noisy, failure-prone hard drive in the living room is going to go away. Everything will be in the cloud. You'll be able to access it that way. So to the point that was made, the rules that are applied from the servers in the cloud about whether you can fast forward through an ad or not will take over, but it would behoove advertisers to make their advertising more engaging and more relevant so that people don't desire to skip it as much.
Yeah, on the net, all ads are current. They're never outside the C3 ratings because they're inserted at time of play and they're never skipped, but there's less of them, 1 or 2. So the economics post the broadcast, it's more profitable for a network to put a viewer onto an internet ABC playout than it is to put them on a DVR under current model, because there's no ad skipping and they're all current, so they're all within the C3 ratings because it's time of play, not time of broadcast. How does it fit into the CE platforms? Where does your customers go in terms of this time?
Yeah, so internet video is already happening on the PC. It's mainstream, so I'm not going to talk from that perspective. Our group is called the Digital Home Group. We're focused on the consumer electronics side. So our job is to, how do you tap into that vast array of video that's available on the internet and bring it to a consumer electronics platform, where a consumer sits in front of the TV. If you go back to the days of the analog, when analog TV switched over to digital, you got better quality, but the thing that annoyed consumers the most was the channel change time, right? When you change channels, it would lock up for a second or two, and it really annoyed consumers. Consumers have a very different level of patience between a PC and a TV. And the way we're approaching it is we've got to give the consumer the same level of user experience, regardless of whether they're watching broadcast video or internet video. Right? So all our platform, the stuff we're doing, all the way from our silicon to our software is, this year we launched a Pentium M-based system on chip. Late this year, we'll come out with an Atom-based system on chip. But we've combined it with software that if you're watching broadcast video from the cable farms and it's standard def or HD, we send it to some hardware decoders. Then you have the vast array of codecs that are on the internet today. If you turn that around and you say, oh, I can't play this content because I don't have the power, what we do is we send it to the CPU and say, it already runs on a PC, it runs on the CPU. That's the user experience we've got to go bring to the space.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on the business model. I'm fascinated here, all the people here talking about video as a medium, and the way that maybe the same applies in the TV widget space, but video is a 2D medium and it's a linear medium, and when the name of this panel is over the top, and when you start thinking more three-dimensionally that there are multiple things that a user may be doing within the bounds of the TV screen that they're watching, and that there may be different layers within it. There are different layers that advertisers can take advantage of, whether it's placing an activity that the user is doing over the top of that video or side by side, et cetera. You're actually, I think, creating a lot more advertising inventory in a lot of places that people can look at that. And the idea of ad skipping, that goes back to the linear point, right? You can skip an ad just because it's a linear medium. You're watching, frame by frame, for a certain period of time. When you start engaging the user with their activities, what they're doing around that video on a single screen, I think you're creating a lot more of those advertising opportunities.
You brought up an issue about channel changing, and especially for Boxy, for iStream, encoding or seeing shows in multiple formats, switching between a move encoded show, a smooth stream out of Microsoft, a flash media stream, linking into Hulu or whatever it is. That's not a television experience because it's not like changing channels. You can do different interfaces. Do we have to move to a video interface standard? Are we going to get there? Is there an NTSC of internet television? Are you shaking your head no? I mean, nope. Why not?
I don't think people expect the internet, and when the internet comes to the TV, that it will behave like TV, or that even the quality is going to be the same. I think the biggest thing that the internet can bring to the TV screen is the freedom that exists today for people on laptops, and that's that you can access a variety of services. Some of them will be in better quality, some of them less, some of them will be choppy, but at least you have the freedom to decide what you want to get and where you get it from, and the experience doesn't need to be zapping through channels. It could be a very different experience, and different developers may have different takes, so I don't think there's going to be a standard. I think that's also what's wrong with True Two-Way or eBIF. I just learned that there's such a thing today. I think those are all doomed to fail. And the reason is that the issue is not the technology or the branding of it. The philosophy behind it is wrong. And that's that there is a gatekeeper that is in control, and he decides what goes into the set-top box and what the consumer gets. And I think if you want to get the same level of interactivity or whatever it is, innovation, to the big screen, you have to open it up and live with the consequences.
Standards are slow to evolve and be adopted, and they limit innovation. And so I think you won't see, for example, codecs on the web. You won't see standards. You'll see things that work really well and people will gravitate towards, like AVC, H.264. But I think it would not be good for us to see someone set a standard around that we all have to abide by, and then as new stuff comes out, take forever in committee to adopt a new standard.
Yeah, yeah, there's really no need at the end of the day. I mean, I think the big difference between an interface like Boxy's or Roku's or ours is that you get to more easily pick what you want to watch. You don't have to channel skip. There's not 300 channels of garbage, right, that I'm going down, 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 down. I make a choice, and I'm much more likely to watch it once I
One
make
would
the
argue,
choice.
especially as you reach out to the $1,000 to $3,000 plasmas, that yes, I can watch YouTube, but I expect a certain level of minimum in terms of the quality, or I don't watch it after a while because at some point it's just not good enough.
YouTube's
No?
not made for the living room,
Okay.
right?
All right.
Cell
So
phone
you're-
ads or cell phone
think it
pictures of
works
cats
well.
bouncing off walls is not, you know.
I wanted to make a comment building on what Tara had said earlier, that an example of where the industry, because of standards and the requirement for that, has fallen behind is advertising. If you look at on-demand advertising on traditional TV platforms, it's way behind the curve. It takes 30 days, for example, for a cable programmer, by the time they want to make an on-demand show available, and it gets through pitchers and catchers and down to boxes, it's ridiculous. So the innovation that's necessary from a web-based development model and content providers and companies like us creating experiences that are more web-based development is critical. And I think that's going to be the advantage for new entrants to get ahead of the industry because we have that flexibility.
I'm going to pipe in for a second. Last couple of years, I don't know if you can all see me, but last couple of years this conference had a static stage set. And this year I decided to go for a big screen because I wanted to explore the ideas myself in this context. So I went for a really big HD. And the tools that I have were great, but they can't do as much as I wanted to do. But the point I wanted to make was that we could put the internet up here. We could play movies. We could play different types of sources that had different levels of quality. And because I think that the future of the screen itself will come from many different sources, and you'll get certain level of quality on the same screen where the big screen behind it will be better quality than the image that will have popped up. And that all of these companies, all of you, will be able to provide your services in that context. What platform will that be? What platform will be open enough? And I do believe that openness is the future. I guess that's my partial opinion. But, and I do think that the cable operators see that writing on the wall because they are at least going to bring the internet to the public because they have to. But I think ultimately, whatever that platform will be, will have to be able to serve a variety of experiences, not just one good one.
I just wanted to add to that and say that we had a lot of internal discussion as we were externally speaking with YouTube because there was a contingency within TiVo that was saying, hey, we're known for our high quality user interface and our high quality experience, and if we introduce YouTube, that wasn't designed for the television. And where that ended up is where we have YouTube launched on TiVo right now, and it's one of our most popular services. So I think Avner's right, Tracy's right, that I think the viewers have become accustomed to understanding what streaming video looks like, and the fact is they might want to watch it in their living room because they might want to share it, have a community experience with however they want to use the content. And if they know that it's bad quality on the web, it's going to be bad quality on the TV, and they've accepted it.
By the way, there's a dress standard on the podium. If you're wearing a pink or red dress, you have to wear a white coverall to match the dress. I'll explain later. Sorry.
But
Okay.
Yeah, and YouTube, right? YouTube's getting better,
Well,
right? You can get
sorry, guys.
HD or high quality content on YouTube, and they recognize that. And I also think that you can play some tricks as a provider and play things in Windows. You don't have to stretch into full screen. There are ways you can make it an acceptable experience.
But there's a lot of content that looks great
absolutely.
coming from the
It
internet
does look
right
good.
now.
Right, exactly.
In 1994 or 1995, Procter & Gamble convened a summit during the early days of the web, invited a lot of web publishers together, and held up a checkbook and said, if you guys don't standardize the ad industry on banners and those kinds of things, I'm putting the checkbook away, and we will encourage every net advertiser to do the same until you guys get your act together. Do we need something similar today, not on the video standards, but on the ad front?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next
Well,
one.
absolutely. I was in the internet business when he talked about that, and until, and it's two different things. It's measurement and ad standards. It used to be that when somebody said, oh, I got a zillion hits on my pages, you get 10 hits per page view. The whole hit thing is BS, and internet video is suffering from the hits mentality, as I call it right now. Nobody knows what to call a view online, but the ad standards are a similar thing where, we've got overlays, and we have pre-rolls, and we have post-rolls, and we have pull-downs, and we have, sponsorships, and we have all sorts of stuff. Some of it
Thank you,
really
Jim.
works, like the sponsorships we do, and some of the overlay, some of the pre-rolls and post-rolls. But the big companies are not going to buy until they can do one format or two formats and have it go over everything, because they're not going to develop custom formats for shows like ours that deliver big audiences for the web, but we're still talking hundreds of thousands, not millions.
And the challenge is it's not just those kinds of formats, it's what's the level of interactivity, right? You've got a 30-second broadcast spot, you've got some interactive spot you developed for ABC.com. What goes on a platform that can be interactive on the TV?
And packaging up all that inventory, particularly when you've got clickable ads on the UI, different spots, pre-rolls, mid-rolls for VOD, and then we've got web interfaces, basically we call zones, that are brand zones. Packaging that up and taking that to an agency and trying to sell that is tough. So what we've converted to is what you mentioned, sponsorships. You can walk in and say, well, you can take advantage of everything for now because there's no standard.
A 1-hour encoded HD television show on a 720p plasma is about 1 gigabyte an hour. Right now, Comcast's usage cap is around 250 gigabytes a month, excuse me. In other words, 250 hours of HD consumption if you're on the net. But other cable networks are talking about 40 gig restrictions and the rest. Is the future, if most of the programming comes over the net, restricted by the gatekeepers you've all talked about before?
Well, why wouldn't they just offer the next package up then? And I'll trade my Premier subscription, which I've already done, for a faster internet subscription.
So you think it's a tiering structure? That's really
I believe that's where it'll go, and that's how I'll pay for it as a consumer.
Okay, so people fearful of putting too much on the net, now the other standpoint is, can the net handle it? We also saw the problem with the inauguration, the Obama problem. Any reaction there to providers?
It's a real problem. I mean, it's the infrastructure guys have really projected if video continues to grow as it is, it will break it for some time, and they predict 2012 by the time it's fixed.
I have to say that's why I built a hybrid broadcast broadband network. So one thing we do is when you get a peak load and you saturate the broadband lines, we route it up over the air, literally over wireless, to broadcast that out. So it's simple one-to-many. Take the short tail, broadcast it, but make sure, as you said, you have access to everything. Consumers will want access to everything over broadband, but the reality of the consumption is a pretty short tail curve.
So there's one guy who's really, really excited about all this. I just saw him speak 2 weeks ago. John Chambers of Cisco. He calls video the killer app, and they are, because they build the devices that power all of this stuff. They're working really hard to make this work, and Cisco's going to make a lot of money on this stuff. I don't think the internet's going to break. We're going to keep on building bigger and bigger programs for people, but we also create smaller versions just in case.
So let's talk about the content, where you get it from, the rest. One of the things you mentioned is your local broadcast is coming out of the subcarriers of the local stations. They're in a world of hurt right now, whether it comes from a DVR, whether it comes from the economy. Basically, prime time's off, but the local stations are hurting real bad because 30% of their ad revenue comes from car dealers. Don't worry, another 20% comes from banks. So it's okay. Does the traditional programming infrastructure of television bother you? Is it all new sources? iStream, you're doing a lot of new real-time events. Is that where we're going to see new events that we've never seen before? Where's the new sources? Jim, you pioneer a lot of that. iStream, what you?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the night, we've been saying for a long time that live was going to be where it's at, and more and more people are putting up live, and that's why videos, has the opportunity to explode in the next, several years. So yeah, I mean, there's concerts that people haven't seen. There's all kinds of events that people haven't seen, and yeah, I think that's.
Here's the way I see local stuff like that. I mean, think about local newspapers. The reason why they were big for a long time was because you print something and it costs a lot of money to move it around. Think about local television. The reason why it came about was a technological limitation, not a media limitation. The limitation was because television signals only travel so far. Well, you know what? The internet makes that go away. There is no reason for local television anymore in most cases because people are going to watch what they want to watch that can come from anywhere around the world, and they aren't limited to how far a transmitter can go. Now, that doesn't devalue local news. Local news is very important, but local news is becoming a commodity. So I'm not bullish on local television. I think the idea is that people are going to be able to watch whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, on whatever device they want, on any screen they want, whether it's in their pocket or in their living room.
Well, the key to local news, I just want to jump in there for a second because we are actually building something that's going to be released really cool. That's very cool for a major network soon. But I mean, the key for them is to stay current and to add a lot of interactivity and a lot of cool widgets and a lot of cool functionality that allows you to target down to the local level, to be able to advertise at that local level, to geo-restrict and do really cool things at the player level to provide the kind of reporting that's not really available today. And those things, you know, that Move's been working with for a while, that we're adding to other players and the functionality. So that's the key to them, and they need to stay ahead. And those who do will succeed, and those who don't will definitely fail.
One observation I wanted to make is that as much as we all participate, you know, or work or look at content from all over the world, we are definitely ignoring the opportunities in our own local communities. The local broadcasters are really behind, and they don't really understand the opportunity ahead of them, and that's because the digital terrestrial revolution has only just happened last month. Now, okay, it's happened, or it hasn't happened quite. I'm not sure. But I think it's a huge untapped resource, a huge massive community that would love to get involved in this industry, and I think that the only company that everybody's familiar with that kind of understands the potential and the power of local reporting is CNN with their iReports. They get it, you know. And I actually I did a panel with the Producers Guild, Amy Jacobson-Kirkauer, if you're in the room, which I thought was great, where we were talking to a couple of the local affiliates here in town, and I said, you guys don't get it. You need to get it now, you know. And they want to get it, but they're kind of stuck and they don't know what to do. But now I think we as a community kind of need to reach out to our local affiliates and help them, because I think once they get involved in this, it's going to grow like wildfire. And I think you'll be surprised how much people want that kind of content and want those kinds of local services and want all of the kinds of things you can provide on a local basis. And then we're talking about a massive industry.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I just want to point out that from our experience, the networks are taking a look at it, and they are, you know, reaching out, and I mean, they definitely see the importance.
I work with local broadcasters. That's not only how we deliver part of our content, but we provide interactivity on their existing over-the-air broadcasts. And I think you said the key word is community. I think their asset going forward is not the reach of their terrestrial transmission, it's their ability to aggregate a community around not only personalities but news. And you know, if you can target programming down to an individual level and certainly to a household level, they'll have an advantage because they can connect to a community. But they need to grasp that outside of their traditional linear broadcast, because their syndication rights are not going to carry them forward.
We're about to open up for questions, so if you have some, start flagging the person right there. Yes, Brian Sithers, hold on. One more thing is, when I was at Move, we worked with a company called New Line, where we encoded all the NFL games in HD, made them available in every country in the world real time, except the US and Canada, because of rights. And it was a real interesting phenomenon, because expatriate there or expatriate here is a big, big market. So it's community both locally and a community of people that are around. So go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, you struck a major, major chord. I mean, my ears just went and my hair stood up on the back of my neck, which is that...
What? Where?
Well, hyper-local. When you're talking about hyper-local is like the Holy Grail. And when Tracy refers to that, you know, while we're trying to figure out the macro picture, on a micro level, people are... you can enable the back fence again. And there are technologies now, Nixel is one of them, they're holding patents, that actually enable the tagging and tracking and enable information to be parsed on a hyper-local level. And so when you look to the local televisions, as television providers, and you're signing their death warrants, really, there's a way for them to come back and to become more active and to partner in the community with schools and local agencies and for local to come back, because even with CNN iReport, it doesn't serve the local news. Just as a case in point, we had a derecho, and I know you all don't know what that is because I didn't know either. It was a 90 mile an hour straight line wind, which cut through 5 states and was never reported on the national news, in spite of the fact that people died. The local media had to get in there to basically mobilize the community to save itself. There was nothing available on a national level.
Right, and I just want to make a point on this is where I think the over-the-top, what the name of this panel, and the idea of widgets that are placed over the top of video really comes in. The way that we started our business, it was largely in the sports arena, where we're getting a national feed from a sports network, and they're showing what's considered somewhat of an interactive ticker at the bottom, but it has nothing to do with me. It's just broadcast on the pipe. But and the reason that we even started this business in the first place was, hey, I want to see on that ticker in that same location information that's personalized to me. Now, once you do that, it can be a launching point. You know, if there is a particular, you know, and this is very simple, right? It's a ticker, it's text scrolling across the screen. But you can actually, on the web, if you had a ticker, you could click on that and then bring up that show or a, you know, video program related to that piece of text that you see it crawling across the screen. Now, we can do that on the TV now. And that's really, you know, when you talk about hyper-local or hyper-personalization of, you know, not just the video that somebody watches, whether it's coming from a channel or from the, you know, from a broadband connection, but being able to just kind of splinter off and to do all of those activities that you want to do now from a remote control.
Brian, I thought you were going to go to video Twitter and I was going to kill you, but that's all right.
Hi, Ben Watson from Overlay TV. Jim's comment about Cisco rubbing their hands together kind of caught my attention. It feels to me like online content is being distributed at the expense of investors to the benefit of an Akamai to some degree. Who's paying, at the end of the day, in your opinion, the cost for digital distribution when it's costing $3 to $5 CPM to just get the content into the living room?
YouTube.
Yeah, when they run out.
You know what's really interesting, without revealing confidential information, the rest, when I was over at Black Arrow and then went over to Move, but the CDN cost in scale 18 to 24 months ago was probably about 20 cents a gig. So if an HD, it's about 20 cents an hour. A broadcast television network makes about 50 cents an hour in all in over a 1 hour show. So if 20 cents just to get the show out, I'm not going to pay Bob Iger, I'm not going to, you know, that kind of stuff. Those costs are down around 5 cents an hour and heading south real fast. So we're seeing numbers that you can do HD over the net 720p for less than 10 cents with scale, the big players.
Yeah, I've
all
heard
in.
people say 3 cents. I mean, they haven't come to me, but I've heard
Jim,
a little bit of
on the
that.
mic.
Oh, sorry. I've heard 3 cents.
Again, I won't reveal details and everything else, but the volume guys have real competitive advantage, and you move into some of these technologies and the rest, you have some very interesting economics. Will it ever get free? Possibly, but the cost as an increment to 50 cents an hour, but the problem is many of these are not 50 cents an hour economic models. Cable's about $15 CPM, they're about 35 cents an hour gross revenue. Jim's more probably down, we've had these discussions before, but different economic models from an ad model. And the question is also, then do carriage models start kicking in? Are there fee structures? Is there a dual revenue stream? Some of the big boys are having a tough time.
Well, I mean, I think the other interesting thing is as ad revenue drops and the cost of streaming drops, we're also seeing, and with the onset of Play Ready from Microsoft, allowing you to protect content on multiple platforms and multiple devices, we're also seeing an uptick in you know, subscription and pay-per-view. And so now you can do some ad-based, you can do, and no matter what, you're going to make some money. And whereas even a couple years ago when, you know, Microsoft had a great product in Windows Media, DRM, it still was too expensive. They couldn't make it work. But now, with the cost of delivery dropping, you can.
One of the interesting things was basically, I was give a presentation at the Cinequest Film Festival. It was down here in San Jose a couple weeks ago. We were doing internet television on a 25, 40-foot screen over the net. And the guy in the back of the room said, I'm on YouTube filming my grandmother doing depression cooking. I've got 35 episodes, I've got little banner ads, and I'm you know, monetizing it that way. Is that where this is headed, down at the local stuff and the rest? Are we down to that? The big TV nets are up in the $35, $45, and $50 CPMs, double CPMs they get in broadcast. The little guys are down in $8 CPMs or less. The commoditization of the banner ad business, isn't that one of the greatest fears of the big nets, is that because of this plethora of avails and everything else, that the slippery slope of ad inventory draws this industry down, and everything like CSI is now up at HBO pricing tier because no one can afford to still produce that content. So does this democratization really cause a problem in terms of the rate card?
I think what's interesting is, you know, working with folks like Yahoo and doing the widget channel stuff on top of our platforms. I think it opens up a big market for advertising on how you tie the broadcast ad dollars then down to the, you know, the targeted ad dollars. Working jointly with Patrick's team, when I watched the news, I lived in Southern California for about a year, and every day the news was about 20 minutes of a high-speed car chase and about 5 minutes of something else. And, that something else was what I cared about. And there was no way for me to go telescope down into that particular news segment. And if the local channel, Hyper, whatever you guys called it, if you can go take that news clip, that 5-minute thing, and say, okay, through a widget, we go telescope down into the real story where I can go spend more time. That gets really interesting because now the person is focused on that particular story. You can actually charge higher CPMs for that particular part of that segment.
I was going to make the comment that you just did, that any current metrics around the value of advertising, particularly on VOD or traditional platforms, you have to throw out. They're not targeted, they're not interactive, they're not measurable. So the industry just hasn't addressed that yet. And I think TiVo and Yahoo and others are doing a great job of raising awareness of this primary issue. The industry isn't there. But I think there's a robust set of ad-supported content out there, but it's not going to get us all the way. There has to be a model that's a pay model, and the question really is it advertising in iTunes? Is it just sell-through? Or is there a subscription pay TV model out there that can drive the industry forward? And I, for one, hope there is, and I'm building one, but I think that's really the economic model that has to be in the mix.
Well, obviously the MSOs and the telcos have different business opportunities because they can deliver telephony and to some extent local avails and things like that. But what I think is interesting about the over-the-top industry, and especially the consumer electronics industry, and I was trying to get some of the TV manufacturers here, and that's why to some extent you're representing them, sort of, is that you have the opportunity to work with all kinds of companies, and not necessarily just with Yahoo, but all kinds of companies that will deliver special services into devices, and so that the interactive television experience becomes an appliance experience. And what does that mean? What are you discussing at Intel? What are the opportunities for delivering over-the-top telephony and interactive television completely beyond the telephony industry? I don't know if you've thought in that direction, but how are you planning to sort of build all of the different relationships with all the other businesses that might want to use Intel chips and appear on a television set?
Yeah, so, there's a lot of stuff that I can't share publicly, but I will tell you one thing, right? The TV manufacturers today are hurting, right? Companies like Vizio are taking their business. There was a recent report that said 40% of all TVs today are built by ODMs. There's no differentiation, right? All the big OEMs go and they sign up an ODM in Taiwan or China, put their label on it. How do you differentiate? You go to a store now and you see a 1080p TV, 120 hertz. You see one sitting next to a 1080p 120. Okay, when you look at the two of them, you say, yeah, okay, I can see the difference. But at home, you don't have a second TV to keep comparing it, right? So they've got to go figure out another business model. They've got to figure out how to go change something in their business model that they don't get commoditized, right? And I think that's the opportunity for the TV manufacturers. They have the brands, they have the channels. If they can strike very unique business models, strike unique deals to go change their business models, where they start differentiating more on things that matter to the consumer, because I think display processing and all that stuff is maxed out. I don't think it matters to the regular consumer, but I think striking business models with some of the folks up here on stage, I think that's the next big change here in this industry.
Okay, we got 4 minutes left. Avner, go ahead.
I disagree. I think that it is commodity for the consumer, and if they're going to chase after features to differentiate, that's going to get them nowhere. People buy TVs because every 5 or so years they feel the need to replace the TV, and they're looking for something that's for the cheapest price, is going to look nice in their living room, and a brand that they relate to, and flat, and whatever fits in their living room. And all those added features, I don't think that's going to cut it.
Yeah, I wasn't even saying added features. What I was saying is, I was making exactly your point. The added features don't matter anymore. So they've got to figure out how to stay in business, right? The Panasonics, the Sonys of the world, they have to go try something. Sony today has a good infrastructure, right? Can they change their business model that the panel just becomes a commodity and they monetize it using other means? Right?
Yeah, sometimes I think you need to accept the reality that what you're doing is commodity. And I think many companies, the mistake they're making is they're refusing to, just to understand that that's a reality. They're in commodity business, and maybe they can go into other businesses, but that business is commodity, whether it's storage or TV or cable. There's many businesses that are commodity, and you should restructure your business to understand that's commodity. So have less people and be more efficient and find some other.
I'm going to take this away from you, man. No, that's one perspective, but actually, I think that's wrong because in a lot of businesses, it looks like you hit a wall, and then guess what? Someone finds, cell phones were at one point could be considered a commodity, and we're in a whole new wave of innovation around cell phones. There's no reason why televisions can't experience the same new wave of innovation. I believe actually they will. I think it'll be much more about software and services than about display technologies, but that remains to be seen. I don't think, though, that Samsung and Sony and Sharp and those companies are giving up. I just think they're going to redirect. They will go through some tough times, as we're seeing now, but they will redirect their efforts around things that actually make more sense, like enabling boxing on the TV.
Well, so Patrick, does that mean that you will do exclusives for widgets, or will widgets become a commodity across all TVs?
Oh, well, if you're asking about our platform strategy is ubiquity. I mean,
So it all turns into a commodity ultimately.
Right, so the TV is still going to be $600. It's now going to have an internet connection, and it'll run all the widgets. So there's still a commodity.
There will be reason that people will continue to find reasons to buy TVs if we keep adding value to them. And internet is, I said it before, the killer application for TV is internet. And that's the next wave of innovation forward.
I think that's a hope to get additional revenues out of those TVs. I believe it's a hope. The life cycle of the display device, as you said, is 5 to 7 years. The life cycle of internet-based video technology is measured in months. So do you really want to buy a TV for, and I know they're going to want to charge $400 extra for this TV now.
They're not.
Well, that would be important to not do that.
The fact is, they've announced their pricing on internet-connected TVs, and there's no difference in the pricing. That's the fact.
There's no difference in costing.
There's no difference in cost. Virtually no difference in cost.
And
no difference in, but they will try to get pricing difference.
And when you talk about...
You're making a similar, you're saying, Patrick brought up the whole phone market, right? I mean, the phone guys are still making money. They just tweak their business model. Right?
You brought up the point of, these TVs are out there for 5 to 7 years, but the instant you put an Ethernet port into them, that software can be changed every day. So
just like the set-top boxes
chips
today?
don't support it after a while.
I think it'll be. I think it's a lot easier.
I promise
than
you
set-top boxes.
All right,
so we keep our fabs.
We've got more people up here than we do down there almost. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. I didn't know how an 11-person panel would work. I think you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much.